Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we're back on the updates 1.98 dev server, and it's time to have a look at the aviation vehicles that are coming to update 1.98, and well, it's a lot of jets, but not just jets, there's a few other things as well. The first vehicle is American, and it is the F3H2, rank 6, battle rating 9.0 vehicle. This is one I know a lot of people are looking forward to, the good old Demon. This has access to the Allison J71A2, obviously 4,590 kgf of max thrust, and with the afterburner 6,330 kgf. Also has access to some really nice guns, 4 Colt Browning 20mm or Browning Colt Mark 12s. It also has access to some really cool secondary armaments, and on top of that has access to a radar, which is really nice, but there is no armor protection on the vehicle actually mounted yet, and the secondary armaments are definitely something to look at. So they have a lot of bombs, basically 250s, 500s, 1000s, 2000s, and this interesting 3,000 pound demolition bomb. It has 856 kilos worth of bomb, explosive mass I should say, and this is just designed to shake the world. So have fun against this in ground realistic. Then you have of course Mighty Mouse making their return. You can also take 4 AIM-9Bs if you feel like it, and you can take 4 AIM-9Bs with a 3,000 pound bomb. So you can go nuke something and then try and dogfight afterwards, which seems like a really fun idea. So the fact is, the F3H, I just want to show you this bomb because this is the first time that we've seen this 3,000 this 3,000 bomb, and actually no, I just want to check something first. Is it a pound bomb or is it a kilo bomb? Let's see. Yeah, it's a 3,000 pound bomb, 800 kilos worth of explosive mass. So yeah, I apologize if I confused anyone, or I may have just confused myself. But this vehicle, as we talked about, has an afterburner, has a really nice actual area on the back there that you can see opens up and closes. Also has a really nice elevator. You can see that it's able to move around quite a lot, and the way that it takes off is, well, it's pointed to the sky, which is kind of cool. But this 3,000 pound bomb is going to really tear up a lot of people's a lot of people's thoughts, and you can see it has a nice air brake there, also has a nice hook on it as well, so you should be able to land on carriers since this is a naval fighter, so it would make sense. And overall, I'm just very happy to see this plane. It's something I feel like should have been added a while back, but I'm still happy to see it now. Has a lovely cockpit, an interesting, an interesting sight, as you can see, radar in the cockpit, and also all the instruments and stuff are really nice. So yeah, overall, a very beautifully done plane, and also flies pretty nice as well. So there goes that massive bomb. Gadoosh. It's such a large explosion, which is lovely to see. But yeah, overall, really nice aircraft, really nice to see, and should fit into a wonderful ground lineup, and also be pretty devastating from a dogfighting point of view. The next two vehicles we're going to have a look at is first of all the F-86K for the Germans. This is just a saber dog. It should be exactly the same as the one that we find in other tech trees such as the Italians. And is it in the Japanese tech tree? I can never remember if it actually is or not. And the question is no. So it is only, at least right now, in the Italian tech tree. Maybe it's in a different tech tree too. But I just can't remember. Ah yes, there we go. It's in the French tech tree. The Germans get their version, which is pretty much exactly the same. So if you're familiar with them, you're familiar with this one. It's got access to 2 AIM-9Bs, unfortunately nothing else, so it's going to be good as an air-to-air fighter, but not so good in any ground realistic sense. But, in contrast, you now have a new G91. So after the G91R3 was added, either last update or a few updates ago, I'm pretty sure it was a few updates ago, the G91R4, which was actually in the Italian tech tree before, if you want to have a look at its stats, it sits as a premium G91R4 here, the Portuguese one. What you'll find is it's now going to be in the German tech tree, and that means that it has access to some weird and wacky and wonderful weaponry. First of all, 450 cals are very standard for most G91s, and then if you have a look at the added on stuff, so you can get some Mighty Mouse, you get some AA Nords, which are of course the proximity Nords, which are they are manually guided air-to-air missiles, and if you've ever used them before, they are hilarious to use, especially if you get a kill. And then you got the AS Nords, which are, obviously manually guided air-to-ground missiles, which I'm sure a lot of people are very annoyed with if they face the R3 a lot. And then you've got the 4 AIM-9Bs and 2 500-pounders as well. So overall, some really nice secondary armaments on this machine, but if you want to know its stats, well, it's already in the Italian tech tree. The Soviets, though, get something completely new. This is the Su-7B. And what is the nicest thing for me about this aircraft is instead of just completely keep adding to the MiG line, we have finally got something different in the form of the SU. So instead of a MiG, we got an SU, and this one is nothing to sniff about. It's ranked 6, battle rating 9.0 right now. Look at that max speed. This is technically a Mach 2 capable aircraft, and it does have access to some pretty cool secondary weaponry since it is supposed to be a ground attacker. It gets access to 64 S5Ks, 4 of the S24s, 28 of these S3Ks, and then it also gets access to 4 250 kilo bombs or 4 500 kilo bombs. So decent amount of firepower. The main thing on it though is its speed, which is going to be an absolute demon to deal with a lot of the time. And these rockets are kind of interesting because they're not mounted straight. They're kind of like the MiG-15 Bish, where they're mounted at an angle, as you can see. So you're going to have to compensate for that at some point, and you can see how large the engine is on this thing. It is definitely something which is kind of beggars belief when it comes to what is going on. It also has a beautiful cockpit. You can see it also has RWR and the radar, which you can't see in the cockpit, I don't think, anywhere, unless I'm missing it. So it would be kind of nice if that was modeled in somewhere. Oops. I think we may have broken a wheel, so I apologize about that. But yeah, you can understand that we've just taken off. Then you got the missiles. You can see that they're quite aggressive, and they do fire in interesting ways. So they do fire individually if you want them to. They don't fire in groups of 2 or anything like that. And with the radar the way it is, you should be able to spot targets pretty easily, and then just rat-a-tat-a-ta like that, and annihilate it. So it's going to be fun to use this vehicle. It has some really nice loadouts on it, and that's not including the very, very, very powerful cannons that it has on it, even though it doesn't have a ton of ammo. But the powerful cannons will be really nice, the NR30s that it has, and the engine, the big old Saturn ALF 1100, is about 8,260 kgf for this mammoth of a machine. Of course, it will need a mammoth engine. It has a little bit of armor as well around the pilot, 20mm of bulletproof glass, 20mm of steel, and then steel behind the pilots as well in the form of 20mm. Britain does get access to a new plane, and it is the Scimitar. The Scimitar Mark 1 makes its way to the game, and after the Swifts being added, this was one of the planes, along with the Gnat, which I hope the Gnat eventually gets added, which I'm really happy to see. The Swift is, of course, a naval plane. As you can see, it's got a huge hook on the back of it, and also it has access to 4 Aidens with 600 140 rounds, so you can definitely stay in the fight for an incredibly long time. And also, it has access to 2 engines, the Rolls-Royce Avon Mark 202s, which each give 4,650 kgf. You got the pilot in the front and fuel tanks galore. You have a little bit of armor on the machine, once again 20mm all over the place, and in the modifications, this is where it gets interesting. So the Scimitar is a subsonic machine, it's not a supersonic one, and it's at 9.3, which seems a little bit high. But its secondary weapons are kind of interesting. So you have access to 4,000 pounders, which is pretty impressive. Then 24 AP rockets, not so impressive, but then you got a mixture, which is kind of nice. 4 AIM-9Bs, really nice for air attacking. Then you have access to bullpups. So this is where it gets interesting for the bullpups. You know, you can use this in ground realistic or naval if they ever get to the eye of a BR. But this to me screams of FJ4B, screams of G91. It looks like Britain finally got their edition, which can carry something which can annihilate ground targets. You can also get mixtures as well, bullpups and sidewinders and bombs. So you can pretty much just put whatever you want on these hard points with a few limitations. I think this thing will go down in BR, but I'm very happy to see it, and it is after the Sea Venom, so that is where it's getting added to the tree, which I think is the perfect place for it as well. Another thing to also mention about these British vehicles is they've had added to them some rockets. So the Mosquito and a few others such as the Firebrand have access to these rockets called Uncle Toms. These Uncle Toms are very large. They have a maximum speed of only 245 meters per second, but they pen a decent amount, 86, 74, 65, and have a 12 kilo explosive mass. And may I just say, they add so much weight to this Mosquito, it feels like it can't take off with it. It really is sluggish, even if you are fully modified. So that is something to take into account. There are other machines as well which can carry these things. The Firebrand is one of them, which I am incredibly surprised that it can take Uncle Tom's. But there's also another one. The Sea Fury gets a slightly different rocket, which is going to act slightly differently as well. So the Sea Fury gets access to triplex RP rockets. This is pretty much 3 RP3 rocket motors strapped together with a massive warhead on the end of it. So these pen 66 across the board and have 12.7 kilos of explosive mass. These should be pretty fun to use, but you only get 4 of them, at least on the Sea Fury. And then the other ones, which I believe are only on the Wyvern right now, so kind of a premium modification, you have the Red Angels, the Red Angel 2s. Now unfortunately I don't have the Wyvern, so I'm going to have to show you them in a test drive. These are, as you can see, once again, max speed 245, explosive mass is about 12 kilos, and has a very similar pen to other machines that we've had. Now, what is different between these and the other ones that I've seen on other vehicles is on the other vehicles, the rockets fire at different times, whereas these ones, they fire at the same time. So you pretty much have one shot, one opportunity to be able to nuke something. These are anti-ship rockets, so they do have a hell of a boom to them, and also they are going to be incredibly good in ground forces at killing tanks. Maybe not as good as bombs in the case of the Wyvern, but I tell you what, giving the Mosquito, the Firebrand, stuff like the Sea Fury, this extra addition to it, I think makes them very, very good. So you can see here, this is what the missiles look like. Boom. Have a hell of an explosion on them, and it's going to be interesting to see how much they do to ships, especially since the Wyvern, the Mosquito, the Firebrand, all of these machines can actually get into naval battles, so we might see some interesting hull breaks with them. But yeah, 3 new rockets for the British, which is pretty cool. There is 1 new vehicle for the Japanese, and it's the B6N2 Model 12. This is a rank 2, battle rating 2.0 dive bomber. Naval aircraft torpedo bomber, and what you find from this, it's pretty much a B5N2, which has been given the features which you really are annoyed the B5N2 doesn't have. It has some offensive weaponry in the form of a 13mm, which is mounted in the center of the machine somewhere. Is it actually modeled on this vehicle? I can't see it. I might be blind. But it does have the Mitsubishi Keisei 25 14-cylinder radial. It also has a tail gunner on the back with the 13mm. Oh, sorry, yeah, it doesn't have any offensive guns. Silly me. So it does say that it does have offensive guns here. I must have misthought. So yeah, it doesn't get any offensive armaments, but it does get 2 defensive guns. The 13 at the top, and then the turret at the bottom. And it also gets a good old gunner in the back, and gets access to some nice secondaries. So 660s, 250s, and 800, and mainly what you're going to be using this for is the torpedoes. The torpedoes are very good on these Japanese vehicles, and these ones don't, disappoint either. Being able to drop these from 0 to 556, so this thing, its max speed is 481, so you're going to be fine with it. Drop altitude of 0 to 260, and also maximum speed in water 77 kilometers an hour, and also travel distance 2 kilometers an hour. You're going to be able to do a lot of damage with this thing if you want to. The other thing as well is the 800 kilo is really nice in ground battles to kind of get things going, and since this also has an upgraded engine, over some of its compatriots, it's going to be pretty fun to use, but I don't think it will be able to run out anything. I'm very happy to see it. I like these Japanese aircraft in the game. Hopefully, we see more of them in the future. The next vehicle is from the Chinese, and it's just a simple one. It's an F-86 F-40. This has been in the Chinese tech tree, and I believe also the French tech tree, for quite a while now. Let's see. Nope. It must be the Italian tech tree. Maybe. I think it's in another tech tree. It might just be the 2 Chinese versions. You have the F-40 here, and then, the 1 Chinese version and the 2 Japanese ones, because you've got one here, and then you've got the premium one that I'm thinking of. But anyway, yeah, this is just a carbon copy of it. It's a Taiwanese F-86 F-40, 1106 kilometers per hour, has access to the 50 cals and all of the wonderful saber things that you'd like to have access to, even has access to M9Bs, 2 1000s, and 16 HFARs to be able to get you through any situation that you may find yourself in. The next vehicle is for Italy, and it's a special one. It's the F-104S. Yep, the Italians finally hit the supersonic era, and they bring along a Mach 2 capable vehicle. This is the F-104S. It has access to a 20mm M61, which is located down here. You can see the blister for it right there. And it does get access to a little bit of armor, 20mm once again, which seems to be the standard for a lot of these vehicles. But the main thing that's crazy about this thing is the engine. This has a General Electric J79 GE19 afterburner thrust of 7,690 kgf, and this thing's acceleration is through the roof, or at least it feels like it when it comes to the dev server. It also has access to 6 hardpoints technically, or 6 places where it can place secondary weapons, so it does get access to some really cool secondary weapons, such as a 2,000 pounder, 3 1000s, a bunch of Zunis, or a bunch of, actually no, let's have a look at what the Zunis look like. Yeah, that's pretty cool, where they're in the pods there. I like that. But the main thing I think most people are going to take is the 6 AIM-9Bs, but understand that you do have a bunch of secondary weapons which are going to be very useful in dealing with a bunch of ground forces if you want to, if you decide to play that mode. So I just want to give you an idea of the acceleration of this machine, because it feels incredibly fast overall from it. It is pretty much just a needle, incredibly small wings, pretty much just a dart going forward, and it also has a really nice, really nice cockpit to it. Let's just take off first before I break anything, because this thing accelerates so quickly. I just want to make sure that, you know, nothing bad happens. So we're already up to 400, and we're not even off the airfield really. 550 we have hit. How ridiculous is that? This thing just accelerates like a crazy person. But if we just pull straight up, because why not? This thing, as we have a look at the cockpit, has some really cool, really interesting ideas that you can find in it. Has a very powerful afterburner on the machine too. And you can see the radar down here. Probably not in the perfect place if you're trying to use this thing as, you know, something which would be kind of useful, you know, to just be able to see around. But everything seems to work when it comes to the gun, when it comes to all of the buttons and the levers. You know, it's a really nicely made cockpit. And now we're at 5,000 meters. So, yeah. It's something which has really good acceleration. And I wasn't even weaping, so it's something that has really good acceleration, but doesn't seem to have great turning power, if I'm honest with you, especially at low speeds or even medium speeds. So it might be good, it might not be, but it's Mach 2 capable, it's fast, it's got radar, its missiles are AIM-9Bs, so they could be better, but at least for now, I think it's just a really interesting and nice vehicle to see. Hopefully we see it for other nations as well. It's also got access, as we talked about, to the wonderful cannon that many of these high-tier machines have. And yes, I will be doing decent reviews on most of these vehicles instead of just a recap. The next vehicle that is on offer is the Mirage. Now the Mirage 3C is one which is heavily anticipated by a lot of people, and for good reason. It's a mainstay of the French aviation industry for an incredibly long time now, and it is a Mach 2 capable aircraft once again. Two 30mm DEFAs, 250 ammunition overall, so not a ton of ammunition, but good enough to be able to burst fire a few people down. The secondary weapons is once again where it shines, and it shines because there are so many of the damn things, and a lot of them are set up to just out and out annihilate, you know, other aircraft. It has access to not just AIM-9Bs, but also stuff like AIM-9Bs and Matra missiles. The Matra missile launch range is 15 kilometers. It's an all-aspect lock range of near 5.5 kilometers. It can pull 15 Gs, which is just insane, and, well, it's actually not that insane if we're honest with it, but yeah, it's just something to think about. The thing that's interesting for me about this large missile, which is the one it's talking about, the other stuff is pretty standard, you know, a bunch of bombs, bunch of rockets, also AIM-9Bs. It also gets access to SNEBs, which I really like, and AS Nords, so good luck, guys on the ground, I salute you. You're going to have a few issues when it comes to all of these new aircraft with their ground fighting ordnance. But the Mirage is interesting because it has, you know, the radar, which is lovely. It doesn't have as good acceleration, in my opinion, as the F-104. It does have the really cool Delta wing design, though, and has a really cool cockpit as well. It's a little bit more simplistic, a little bit more smaller than the F-104, or at least it seems like it's a little bit smaller, but you can see all the stuff down here. You can see obviously the radar at the bottom, which, you know, is going to be useful in simulator, and overall you even have a nice lever back there. Isn't that nice? I don't think I've ever seen that before. And in true Delta Wing style, the Mirage is very maneuverable, and it's able to kind of just do whatever it wants. But I do just want to point you towards this missile, because the missile, it like does a roly-poly when it goes in. You see what it's doing, the wiggle? Do you see how interesting that is? It's just going in and doing the wiggle. And look how far it flies. Like, it's still tracking the guy, by the way. I don't know if it's going to hit him, but you can see how far like that came away from, and it just does this really interesting wiggle on it. So yeah, we did launch it a little bit far, and he was turning pretty hard there, but you can see what you're supposed to do with that missile. You know, you're supposed to just annihilate a target with it. Overall, the Mirage is looking really fun, and I'm sure a lot of people who are desperate to have some French supersonics will be happy that this is going to be, you know, one of the vehicles that is now available. If you want to know where it is in the tech tree, it's going to be after the Super Mystère, so make sure to get that ground out if you want this quickly. And the last change to aviation is something for the Draken. The Draken, or the J-35, has now access to better air-to-air missiles. So before it only had RB-24s, these were equal to AIM-9Bs. Now it has access to RB-24Js, which are much better. Maximum overload 20 Gs, lock-on rear aspect 5.5 kilometers, got a good launch range, got a good max speed, going to be able to deal a lot with more maneuverable targets, and also easier to lock on with them. So the Draken may actually, be able to say like its BR of 10.3 is required now because of its RB-24Js. But that is the new aviation that is coming to the game on update 1.98. Hopefully it will whet your fancy, and there is at least one propeller machine, so in my opinion, I'm happy. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Eugene's Terry, Daniel Stanton, Blackie, Elove Goat, Jay Wilt, Martinez, B. Young, Chris Giltnane, Trigger Hippie, Ambrosius McClellan, and also Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.